Second Lieutenant Mara Ellison arrived at Falcon Ridge Air Force Base already aware that there were rules written down and rules no one admitted existed. She followed every regulation exactly. Her uniform was tailored, inspected, and approved, but her body still drew attention the moment she stepped off the transport bus. Her chest strained against fabric designed for a different frame, and no amount of professionalism erased the looks that followed her across the concrete. People pretended it didn't matter, which somehow made it matter more. Conversations paused when she entered a room. Eyes flicked downward and then away too late to be polite. Comments floated through the air that never used her name but always landed near her. Professional appearance. Distractions on the flight line. Quiet laughter that stopped when rank was nearby. No one ever said she was unqualified. They didn't have to. They treated her like she was temporary, like eventually she'd ask for reassignment or crack under the pressure. They acted surprised when she spoke with confidence, when she corrected errors, when she knew the systems better than the people questioning her. Mara kept her head down. She learned quickly that reacting would only make things worse. Any frustration would be labeled emotional. Any defense would be framed as insecurity. So she absorbed it all in silence. She worked longer hours than required, memorized procedures until she could recite them without thinking, and made herself invisible except when precision was required. When she spoke in meetings, her ideas were often ignored until someone else repeated them. When she made a minor mistake, it lingered far longer than it should have. When she succeeded, the credit drifted away from her without comment. She endured it all with a calm expression that others mistook for weakness. The physical toll was constant. Her back ached. The flight line heat pressed down on her like punishment. She layered compression garments under her uniform, endured discomfort quietly, and refused special accommodations because she knew how they would be interpreted. She would not give anyone another reason. When the base announced a large-scale readiness exercise, she noticed a structural flaw in the planning timeline almost immediately. Two squadrons shared a refueling dependency that left no margin for weather disruption. She mentioned it once during planning. A captain waved it off. Someone smirked. Someone else said, "Relax." She said nothing more. She prepared contingencies anyway. When the weather shifted, exactly as predicted, the exercise began to unravel. Aircraft stacked. Launch windows collapsed. Voices overlapped. Frustration mounted. Someone slammed a binder shut and demanded to know how this had been missed. Mara stepped forward calmly and outlined a solution she had already mapped. Routes were adjusted. Launches staggered. The operation recovered just enough to avoid embarrassment. After that, the laughter faded. Not completely. But enough. Months later, during a real operation, an aircraft returned with a systems anomaly mid-flight. Time compressed. Decisions mattered. Mara analyzed the data, issued clear recommendations, and the pilot followed them. The aircraft landed safely. The after-action report mentioned her by name. At the annual briefing, the commander praised her professionalism, resilience, and judgment under pressure. The applause was steady and respectful. Earned. For the first time since arriving at Falcon Ridge, Mara allowed herself to believe the story was ending the way these stories always did. Then the briefing continued. A colonel from an unfamiliar department took the podium. His uniform was immaculate, his expression unreadable. The slide behind him displayed dense charts filled with acronyms no one recognized. Following recent operational reviews, he began, "We have identified a previously overlooked physiological factor contributing to pilot survivability and system stabilization." The room leaned forward. Specifically, he continued, clicking to the next slide, "Mass distribution in the upper torso has demonstrated measurable benefits during high-G maneuvers, rapid deceleration events, and prolonged vibration exposure." A ripple of confusion moved through the audience. The next slide appeared, diagrams, balance vectors, force dispersal models. The shapes were unmistakable. Lieutenant Ellison's performance, the colonel said evenly, prompted a deeper analysis. Every head turned toward Mara. She didn't move. "Our findings indicate that what was previously considered a distraction," he continued, "is in fact an operational advantage." Silence pressed down on the room. Accordingly, the colonel said, the Air Force has approved a voluntary enhancement initiative for select personnel. Another slide appeared. Adaptive Physiological Augmentation Program. Someone whispered, this has to be a joke. The colonel did not react. This program is intended to improve balance, resilience, and structural tolerance under combat conditions. A hand rose. Sir, what kind of augmentation? The colonel paused, as if choosing the least dramatic phrasing possible. Breast implants. No one laughed. These are not cosmetic, he added immediately. They are standardized, regulated, and mission specific. This is equipment. Within days, official memos circulated. Participation was framed as optional, though the language suggested otherwise. Surgeons arrived. Medical diagrams replaced motivational posters. Men who had once joked about professional appearance stood in silent lines outside the medical wing, staring straight ahead. Pilots debated specifications like loadouts, symmetry, weight distribution, tolerance ratings. Someone complained quietly about back pain during point. Another asked if dress uniform sizing would be updated. A third asked about religious exemptions and was told gravity did not recognize belief systems. Flight suits were redesigned. Harnesses adjusted. Training manuals updated. No one joked anymore. They spoke in acronyms. They spoke in numbers. They spoke the way people always do when something becomes official enough to be unquestionable. Mara watched all of it without comment. One afternoon, a major approached her carefully. Lieutenant, he said, medical has requested your input. My input on what, sir? Optimal configuration. She stared at him for a long moment, then shook her head. No. The major nodded, visibly relieved. Understood. The program continued anyway. Falcon Ridge gained a reputation. Other bases followed. Studies were published. Language evolved. What had once been mocked became standardized. What had once been whispered became policy. Mara continued to do her job the way she always had, quietly, competently, without spectacle. She trained new officers, reviewed flight data, and corrected errors before they became failures. People listened to her now, not out of sympathy or guilt, but because she had become unavoidable. Her body never changed. The rest of the base did. New flight suits arrived in bulk shipments, redesigned to accommodate updated physiological standards. Storage lockers were refitted. Medical check-ins became routine. One afternoon, as Mara crossed the flight line, she passed a group of pilots arguing quietly. I'm telling you, the extra mass helps stabilize the roll. Yeah, but only if the distribution's right. Medical says it's within tolerance. They noticed her and stopped talking. Then one of them nodded, not awkwardly, not apologetically. Just respectfully. Mara nodded back and kept walking. Weeks later, a base-wide memo was released. Updated physiological baseline standards. The final line read, these changes are not considered accommodations. They are enhancements. Mara closed the document. For years, she had been told she was the problem. Too noticeable. Too distracting. Too much. Now the entire system had bent itself into knots trying to replicate what it once mocked. She adjusted her uniform out of habit, straightened her posture, and returned to work. Because in the end, she hadn't proven she belonged by changing herself. She proved it by surviving long enough for everyone else to realize they'd been measuring the wrong thing the whole time. And if that realization required half the base to get implants to understand it, so be it.